Hey everyone, and welcome to the fifth installment of Past Facebook Live Pop-Up Expert Series. In this session, you'll have the opportunity to ask me pretty much anything you want regarding data, SQL, or tech in its real-time live Q&A format. If you've got a question you'd like to ask, go ahead and paste it in the comment section below now or anytime during the session, and they'll pop up on the screen as I answer them. Definitely love hearing about your experience in the environment and working with SQL Server and what you've seen. So while those first questions come in, a little bit about me. You'll probably notice I'm in a hotel room, which I wasn't planning on being in today. So this was just easier for me to stay up in Orange County overnight and do this from the hotel instead of trekking all the way home and trekking back up here. But thanks everyone for coming. So a little bit info about me while questions come in. I've been working with SQL Server for about 20 years now. Yeah, 20 years, something like that. I've been consulting for 8, give or take. And I've had my own company for about 5 or 6 of those. So I've been doing this for quite a while now. I've been working with SQL Server 6 since SQL 6.5, and still working with it today, obviously up through 2017. Got a lot of experience beyond SQL that I've picked up over the years. Obviously, a lot of Windows knowledge, a lot of Windows experience. And now, as we have moved towards the cloud, I've picked up a lot of that cloud knowledge, and because since a lot of our customers have gone that route, we've got some fairly large clients that are up in the cloud, mostly in Azure. But we've got clients that have somewhere in the neighborhoods of 100, 200 terabytes of data sitting up in Azure. I think all told, we've got somewhere around 500 million or 500 terabytes. I don't remember how my increments work, of data sitting up in Azure across all our customers, and that's ramping up quite a bit as we're moving new customers to Azure, either on behalf of Microsoft and moving some of their customers up, or just the customers that we get directly and moving them up. So I see a couple of questions have come in, so let's go ahead and take a look at that first question and see what comes up. So first question is from Lori. What's your favorite tool for working with multiple result sets? So with multiple result sets, you get awfully tricky, awfully fast. Obviously, there's Mars inside SQL Server and how it can dump data out, but it's got a lot of potential issues. I think there's some issues in Azure, or there were at one point, with dealing with things like Mars. Normally, what's being used on the front end that I see a lot of these days is just ASP.NET and how it's processing multiple result sets as they come back. I don't deal personally. The work I do, I don't deal with a lot of the front end interfaces just because that's not what I specialize in. There's other people that deal with a lot of that front end stuff. I typically just work on the back end and how to get that data out of the system as quickly as possible, be it through multiple result sets coming back to the client, or if we just need to pull back results sets one by one and just iterate through them, or however the front end needs to pull that data back. So it really just depends on how we need to get that data to the client so that it can be easily ingested and processed by the end application. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next question we've got here. You're welcome, Lori. She says thank you. So we got another question here from Doug. Do you have any recommendations for GDPR, CPPA, We're using data masking to solve having production data under dev test. Oh God, I could spend all day talking about GDPR and what to do with it. The first recommendation with GDPR is I'm not a lawyer, so consult your corporate lawyers. That's probably going to be our first thing to look at is what are we required to do and what are our lawyers telling us we are required to do, because that is obviously going to be the biggest thing that you need to deal with, because they've got to defend whatever you're doing. And so if you've got European data or data from European citizens in your system, how do we deal with that? So moving that data down from production to other environments, that's going to get very, very tricky, very, very fast. There are some good tools out there for data masking. Obviously, SQL Server does native data masking if you're on a newer version of SQL. So I think it's 2016 and higher. You can have dynamic data masking built into it. Now, keep in mind, data masking tools like dynamic data masking are not data security tools. They're data obfuscation tools. So all those are is it's all about hiding the data from the people that aren't supposed to see it. You're not actually removing that data as it moves into dev test. That's where a tool like Redgate's data manipulation tool, I think so, SQL Data Generator, is going to come into play, because it's going to actually modify that data that you're presenting to those down-level environments and change that data as you restore those backups, or once you restore those backups. And really, that's what the key thing to all this data masking is, making sure that data is totally randomized. The biggest trick with a lot of these data masking tools is you can't be able to work backwards and figure out who that data was for, or what the production values for that data would be. So you can't just do a simple replace on last names, for example, so that Cherry as a last name becomes Smith, unless everything becomes Smith, because otherwise you work backwards and figure out what things are supposed to be. And you can't do just scrambling of names as data moves down from production to down level environments. You've got to be very careful about how you're dealing with that data as those pieces get moved down, because otherwise you're going to end up in this weird situation of, great, now all our down level environments also contain GDPR data. And what are we doing to secure those, and how are we protecting those data sets, because those all now fall under the exact same requirements of our other production systems. So while there are tools to do that, you still got to be very careful about how you're dealing with moving that data down into those down level environments. Let's see what else we got here. We got a question from Chuck. What tools are you using or recommending for data quality improvement? I'm on a shoestring budget. So data quality and shoestring budget are typically not two phrases you're going to see in the same sentence. Data quality is going to be typically fairly expensive if you're going to be looking at a tool, because those tools are not cheap. So if you're looking at something like DQS or MDS in SQL Server, for example, those are Enterprise Edition features. So you're only going to get those with Enterprise, and that's going to be $24,500 for every 4 cores. So that's not going to be cheap in the slightest. I don't know of any tools specifically in that market that are going to be available downstream that are going to be less expensive than that. If you shoot me an email, Chuck, Mr. Denny at dcac.co, I can look around and see what I can find that's decent, that's not that expensive. But I know most of those tools are going to be fairly pricey, just because there's not a lot of companies buying a lot of those tools, so they have to be expensive for the software vendors to make a buck. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see here. Message from James. What are the best resources for people who get thrown into a DBA type role and need to upskill quickly? So the past summit or the various recordings that are available on the past webpage are going to be fantastic. There's thousands of hours worth of material that's available on there that you can just watch for free. Even if you haven't made it to the summit in previous years, all that information is available. You can only watch, I believe, the previous or 2 years back worth of content and older. That said, I think there's 10 or 12 years worth of stuff up on the website. At 140 hours worth of content per year, that's easily 1,000 hours just during the past summit. On top of that, you've also got all the virtual chapters, which are going to be specifically geared towards a specific vertical that you can look in, and those all have their sessions recorded. So the virtual chapters are pretty cool because there's actually a virtual chapter specifically targeting people who are just getting into DBA type roles. I don't remember the name of the chapter at the moment, but it's one of the more popular ones. I know I've presented at it a couple of times now. And all those sessions are recorded and they're free. They usually meet during the day, so you can just watch the recording or watch the live webcast, kind of from work. You probably want to set headphones or something. And you can ask questions of the moderator. If you can't watch the session live, you can just catch the recordings online because they're all posted up on the PASS website. On top of that, you've got companies that are doing specific training for other companies. So you can go to companies like Upskility. They're a partner of Microsoft, and they do a lot of Azure training and other training that you can either watch online or you can download. And there's various other places that you can go online where you can actually do training specifically around SQL Server and how it interacts with the rest of the environment that you're working in. If you've got a few people at your company that need training, obviously you can come to a consulting firm like us. I'll plug myself real fast here. So you can do training specifically through a consulting firm like us, where it's more tailored specifically towards what you're looking at. So sometimes that works if you've been thrown into a DBA role. If there's other DBAs as well that also need to be upskilled. If not, that usually isn't very cost effective from a manager perspective, just because the cost can be a little higher because you're having somebody come out on site, build content specifically for you. So one-on-one training doesn't necessarily work, but it can. But there are definitely a lot of resources out there that you can hit that are either free or cheap. That one I do know the answer to for free or cheap. And then obviously, if you want to see what's going on in real time, kind of in live events, you've got the PASS Summit, which is going on in Seattle in November. You've got Microsoft Ignite, which is kind of Microsoft's big show for the year, which will be coming up in September. And I'll be speaking at both of those, and those are both great places to get SQL Server knowledge and experience at kind of a live event where you can actually talk to the presenter and talk to the people that are working on the product groups and kind of see what's going on. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, a long question. So a question from Lotan. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hi, I have 200 million records stored in Azure Data Lake, and I need to load it into one table on Azure SQL Database, not Data Warehouse. What is the fastest approach? Data Lake and the database are on different subscriptions. So I believe Azure SQL DW now supports Polybase. So that'll probably be your best bet, because you can just use Polybase to point it to the records stored on the data lake and ingest them that way. Failing that, SSIS is going to be your best approach probably. You could look at ADF version 2, but it's not going to be kind of quick to it's as easy to develop because you got to think more Azure. So you can run an SSIS package and run it in a VM in Azure and keep it all up there. One thing I will say about moving data between subscriptions, keep in mind you are going to be dealing with egress fees as that data moves out of one subscription into the other. So you do have to pay for that egress. So there is some data movement that you're going to have to deal with. With 200 million records, hopefully it's not that bad. It shouldn't be. So let's see what our next question is. So we've got a question from the past community here. So should I be patching SQL Server, and should I be waiting for Service Pack 1? So yes, you should be patching SQL. Pretty much shortly after those patches come out is typically what we recommend to our clients. The whole concept of waiting for Service Pack 1, I mean, in SQL 2017 and beyond, that's dead because there are no more service packs. We now have cumulative updates, which come out, I want to say monthly or bi-monthly, for the new version of SQL Server. Obviously, older versions of SQL Server still do have service packs. The whole concept of, or the whole thought process of waiting for Service Pack 1, that was kind of introduced back in the Windows 2000, SQL 2000, SQL 2005 timeframe. And back then, that was sort of okay. I mean, that sort of made sense. These days, we really want to push patches out fairly quickly because those patches are going to have bug fixes in them that we usually want to get pushed out to our SQL servers fairly quickly. Even if they're not bugs that are impacting our SQL servers that production performs today, they could be impacting something else later. So we want to get those patches out as quickly as possible. On top of that, if we need to call support, the first thing they're going to ask you to do is patch your SQL server and see if that fixes your problem. So that's going to be kind of the first step in most troubleshooting processes with CSS is have you patched. And even though we haven't seen it in the past, there's no longer a rule saying they can't introduce new features in cumulative updates. So we could see new features coming into SQL Server in these different patch versions as they come in. So those are worth keeping an eye on to see what new features may be coming, because you could get a new feature introduced in a cumulative update that you're waiting for, and if you're not applying your patches, you're not going to see those. And on top of all of that, there's the whole security aspect to it all. So there are security patches and potential data corruption patches that are introduced in cumulative updates that you will want to then go ahead and apply to your boxes. Without having those CUs handy, things are going to kind of fall apart fairly quickly. So let's see what else we got here. So another question from Pass, should a DBA be looking at Linux for SQL Server? So I say yeah. At the very least, keep an eye on what's going on. Obviously, SQL Server on Linux was introduced with SQL 2017, so it's going to be a fairly new version. It's going to take a little time for market adoption to pick up. And then I think the licensing is going to need to change to make some of this stuff work, especially with SQL Server and Docker and stuff like that. But it's going to be there. It may take a year or two, but it's going to show up. So it's definitely going to be worth taking a look at SQL Server on Linux and keeping an eye on it and being able to speak to it intelligently at your company, if somebody does ask about it. Not all of the SQL Server platform is going to be there yet. That'll take some time, but give us some time; it'll be there. Eventually, everything should show up, or almost all features will show up. But right now, it's basically the core engine, SQL agent, and that's pretty much all that's there. But the performance is there. Performance of SQL Server on Linux is very similar to what you'd expect to see on SQL Server on Windows. So definitely keep an eye out on what's going on in that space, because it's just going to get more and more popular over time as systems are potentially moving to Linux. I know a lot of companies are looking at SQL Server on Linux. They're just not quite ready to pull the trigger yet, but give them some time, and eventually they will get there. So next question, should someone who's just getting started with SQL Server get their Microsoft certifications? So I'm going to have to probably break with the pack from a lot of people here and say no, probably not. So keep in mind, certifications are built for people that have 3 to 5 years experience with the product. So if you don't have that 3 to 5 years experience with SQL Server, you're probably not going to be able to pass the SQL Server exams. Also keep in mind the exams that Microsoft releases aren't geared towards the features that you use at work on a regular basis. They're going to be on the entire product. So what it says on the web page is what's going to be tested on. And so there's going to be a lot of Azure questions and how to do things specifically in Azure versus on-prem, depending on what kind of exam you're taking, be it an on-prem exam or an Azure exam. So there's definitely going to be some crossover between those two. But it's definitely going to be, I think, worth taking a lot of those exams once you've got a little experience with SQL Server. I hate hearing about people that waste money on exams that have basically no chance of passing the exam because they've been working with SQL Server for 6 months or something like that. And that they're trying to move into their next role by taking the exams to move up the chain, because those aren't the kinds of people that the exams are built for. Like I said, those exams are built for somebody with 3 to 5 years experience. And when they are writing the exams, or when they're building the exams, they're building them specifically around that assumption that you've got some experience with the product and you've used most of, if not all, the features in the product when you're taking them. So, anything the product can do is a fair question. I do know there's people out there that have recommended things like brain dumps to try to get past the exam questions. And all you're doing there is cheating yourself and you're cheating Microsoft, because you're making the exams so that they're not as worthwhile for you and they're not as worthwhile for the people that are looking at your resume, because you're not the one passing the exam if you're using a brain dump. All you're doing is memorizing a bunch of questions that they think are on the exams and they think are the right answers, and pushing those up, and you're taking them and kind of regurgitating those. So I would say definitely recommend staying away from a lot of those sites. With a lot of those brain dumps, you'll also notice you're in violation of the NDA that you've agreed to with Microsoft. And so that's obviously going to be a bit of a problem, because you're breaking your contract with Microsoft when you take that test. And if Microsoft ever were to find out that you did take a brain dump or use brain dumps to pass an exam, or if you give questions to a brain dump vendor, they could actually pull your certification from you, so you're no longer certified and bar you from the certification exams. So something worth keeping in mind as you're taking those. So let's go ahead and take a look at our next question. I think we just got time for a couple more. So the next one is another community question, and is Azure really ready for databases? Absolutely. So if you asked me this a few years ago, I would have said a different answer, because Azure used to be really, really bad. That is no longer the case. Azure is a nice, stable platform. I mean, we're moving a lot of our clients to it, so it better be. So it's definitely ready for databases. I mean, we've got some clients that are in Azure that are running some fairly large databases, several terabytes in size, some of them, that are either in process or have moved completely to Azure as their hosting platform. So I know in IaaS, so infrastructure as a service, we just moved a few weeks ago one of our clients with a 3 or 4 terabyte database up to Azure. In the next few weeks, I think we're moving their final system from their colo up to Azure, and it's 20 something terabytes. That will be moving up, and that's just the one system. That's that 20 terabyte size. If you're doing platform as a service, yeah, it's still ready for SQL databases. It's all about how you design that application, and is that app ready for moving into SQL Server and moving up into that environment. We've got one client, for example, that we're moving from IaaS to PaaS. It's probably a couple-year project. One phase of that project is they've got to convert their big monolithic, terabyte-sized database down to a whole lot of small databases so we can put them in IaaS, because otherwise the databases won't fit and it won't scale. But if we can break everything down into smaller components, we can basically have one of their clients per database in Azure. And then we can have basically unlimited scale across however many clients they want, because we can throw thousands of databases up there. And I've got a client I'm talking to right now. They've got 100,000 databases that we're looking at moving up to Azure. Another client I've worked with in the past, they're a large payroll company, and they've got a couple 100,000 databases that are up in SQLDB in Azure today. So it's definitely doable. It's all about moving stuff up there and being smart about how you move stuff up there, and not just throwing databases up into the system. So I think I've got time for one more question because we've only got a couple of minutes. So here's a question that I get surprisingly a lot. What's the best way for a college graduate to make the most money? So the easiest way would be to find something that you really enjoy doing. The money will come. You're never going to make the most money possible right out of the gate. It's just not the way the world works. But if you find a part of the technology sphere that you really enjoy working in, that'll get you where you want to go. It's just going to take some time to get there. So whatever part of tech you work on, make sure it's a part you enjoy, because that's the way you're going to really excel at it. And that can really, really help you move you towards kind of where you want to be in your career over time. It may take a little while, but you'll get there. Give yourself a little time. It took me a while to get to where I wanted to be in consulting and in IT. So just kind of give yourself a little bit of time. On that note, unfortunately, we are out of time. It is 11:30 according to my clock. So thank you everyone for joining and participating in today's past Facebook Live pop-up expert session. There's definitely some great questions from the community and from everybody out there. There's an amazing lineup of experts planned for future events, so be sure to like and follow the past Facebook page for any updates and details coming up on the face pop-up expert sessions that are going to be similar to this one. And of course, if you're not already a member, be sure to join the PASS by going over to pass.org and setting up your profile and getting all set up there and create your account there. That is obviously the best place to connect and learn. And they host a ton of available content for you to download and watch. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and see you all later.